Hi, my name's Judy. I thought I might today just do a little video of some work on a limestone block that I've been working on to produce a sculpture of a nude bust, I suppose you'd say. I'm lucky enough to have some limestone to work with, but the same sorts of principles apply for working with Hebel, and it's very easy to work. You only need tools like a gyprock saw, files, chisels that you'll never use with timber again, anything basically sharp, and then you can finish off with sandpaper. Essentially the first parts are to use a saw. I also have a pruning saw that I use a lot for making large cuts, and so this is going to be a nude. So as you can see, I've done a bit of work already and taken off the largest corners and largest pieces inside. Always with sculpting, take a little bit. You can always take more, but you can't put it back. So having a very large tooth means that it will take off quite a lot of the stone with each move. Well, hopefully you can see that it takes off a fair chunk, but not too much, so you can control it fairly easily. And it's always good to just stop regularly to make sure you haven't taken off too much. It's quite hard work. When you're using a chisel, you can obviously, first of all, never push it towards your hand, because they are still sharp, even though you're blunting them on the Hebel or limestone. But when you're wanting to use just a very small amount, you hold it so that the flat end is closest to the material. When you want to take out more, you can use it that way so that it's got the flattened bit facing up. Gyprock saw, and going in on an angle to take out more material than you would with just a file or a rasp. So checking all the time that what you're doing is what you want, particularly for 3D work. Obviously check from every angle what it's going to look like. So I'm going to attack with my small gyprock saw. When I want things to happen a bit more quickly, I can use this big pruning saw, which is really cuts through beautifully. And then continuing with the smaller saw for the last little bit. So having got that piece off, so just using a chisel to work away. Got a round file that is also very useful for things like this. Using both the rounded side of the rasp and the flat side, because that's fairly flat there, but it's rounded here. Started working with the chisel very carefully to take out quite a bit of material around here, being very careful which direction and holding the chisel with my hand to make sure I can, my other hand that is, to improve my control. So once I've done that with the rasp, it will have the marks from the rasp in it obviously, and then you use a file to smooth that off, and eventually I'll get to sandpaper. Soapstone is another material that is equally easy to work with these hand woodworking tools, and the only thing with soapstone is that it's a little bit harder. You can get a very mirror finish on it, but there's a lot of different qualities of soapstone, and there are often flaws within the stone, and sometimes they can be great and sometimes they can be exactly where you don't want them to be, so that's just something to be aware of. So now I've got to the stage where I've used all the files and rasps and all that sort of stuff to get to a stage where it's ready for the final stage, and that is sanding. So I've got a selection of papers here ranging from 120 grit up to 400 grit. So I'm just going to start with the grittiest one, obviously, the 120. And just and you can feel how this is certainly getting smoother. Using a paintbrush to get rid of the sand once you rub it back. Just a nice soft paintbrush is a really good way. Always being aware of where the wind is blowing or not. So keep brushing it away so you can really see what you've done and what's left. You may recall that I was talking about imperfections in the stone, and when I've started to try and get this really smooth, I've realised that there was an imperfection just there that I really didn't want to have there. And as I said before, you just have to work with it. So I'm having to actually start back with the small rasps and files, just doing the final sand with 400 grit paper. I'm calling her Aphrodite, and I'll just turn around a bit so you can see.